January 1st doesn't just celebrate the new year, but also awards season, where we find out not only about the best new vehicles, but also the 10 best engines, according to the WardsAuto editorial team. Today on Autoline This Week, 3 of the team discuss this year's winners. And now, here's your host, John McElroy.
On today's show, we're going to get to the bottom of what the best engine is that you can buy, because I'm joined by 3 of the top editors from WardsAuto who have evaluated 32 different powertrains to come up with the 10 best. And those editors are Tom Murphy, Christy Schweinsberg, and Bob Gritzinger. And it's great to have the 3 of you here.
Thanks.
We've been doing this for a number of years now, going over Ward's 10 best. And what I find so interesting is we're starting to see more and more green powertrains creep into your list. Tom, I think you've got 4 of them in this year. Why don't we start out with the Chevrolet Bolt?
Sure.
Why did you decide it's one of the 10 best powertrains out there?
Because it's got a 238-mile range. That's why. I mean, there's a lot of other electric vehicles out there. The Volkswagen e-Golf was close in our list. We really did like that one, but when you look at the 2 differences in range, I mean, nearly 100 miles difference.
The Bolt is over.
Yeah, the Bolt is over the e-Golf. And then also the Chevy Volt was in the competition this year.
The plug-in Volt.
The plug-in Volt, which was a winner last year, but the Bolt just really blows us away. I mean, that range is great. It's fun to drive, and as we see more and more of these battery electrics, everything's got to be over 200 miles. It seems like that's kind of the price of entry. Although we're looking at the new Nissan Leaf, which is lower. They have that lower threshold on battery range, but well into the future, it's got to be over 200 miles.
Did Tesla factor into this, the new Tesla Model 3?
Can you get one? No, I don't think so, not yet.
That's a sore subject for us, John. I mean, we've never had a Tesla in the office to evaluate. We've asked for vehicles, and they have not wanted to
participate.
Yeah. And
it's not just you guys, because I'm in the media. I've never gotten a Tesla from Tesla, although I've had a chance to drive some from private owners. But yeah, Tesla picks and chooses who in the media they will work with.
Well, and in their defense, I mean, we have a price cap at $63,000, so base price. And a lot of the Teslas have been priced over that, out of contention. But now, of course, the Model 3 will come along. We're hoping things will change, and we'd like to include it next year.
Mm-hmm. Just to add one thing on the Chevy Bolt, you know that it's won every award in the past year. This was our first opportunity this time around to really get in it, test it the way we test vehicles. In our everyday driving, our regular commutes, long drives, and so we can now see why it's won all those awards.
Mm-hmm. And Bob drove it to Traverse City and charged at a Dairy Queen, right?
I did, yes, at the back of a Dairy Queen. It's a wonderful thing. I can provide that picture to anyone.
Okay. You also have the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid, which is pretty good. Christy, why'd you guys like this one?
Great range if you keep it charged all the time and you're a mom or a dad driving kids around, you don't ever have to use a drop of gasoline. And even if you do use gasoline, because we had 2 to test, we had one we were charging all the time and we had one we weren't charging, which I actually drove here today. We're getting right now 23.9 miles per gallon in the one that we never charged. Because when you're on that brake all the time, driving in the city like I do, you're regenning and feeding that battery, and it's a big vehicle too. And there's so few electrified big vehicles out there in the market, and this one is very usable, a lot of utility with the electrification.
And there were times when I was driving the one that we kept plugged in frequently, and I was seeing 50, 60 miles per gallon at certain times, because we kept the thing.
Now hold it, because I think they're advertising 80 miles to the gallon. Well, are they not?
In some cases, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
MPGE, but still, 50 to 60 in a vehicle that size, that's Prius numbers, So
temperature makes a difference. We had that last week, right? So it's getting a little colder now here in Michigan, so that can impact your range.
But it does a great job of shifting between its powertrains.
In the hybrid mode.
Right, so that you can get far more use out of the electric miles, the engine will kick in and kind of almost extend your electric driving. So it's really slick.
And pure electric, you can get what, about 30 miles?
33.
Yeah.
Although we've seen some people on chat rooms saying as high as 45 or 50.
Man.
And I'm not sure how they're doing that. But
Downhill.
Yeah. Well, I know at one point I drove the vehicle 27 miles and used 17 miles of electric range.
Yeah.
So
you would have gone over 30.
it's
for sure.
doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christy, you raised a really good point. In the colder weather, you lose range in an electric vehicle.
Certainly.
Is that because of the battery or because you're running the heater or the seat heaters?
I think both. I think lithium ions like warmer temperatures. And yes, you do lose range when you run not so much the seat and the steering wheel, if you have a heated steering wheel, but definitely the HVAC system. And we had some vehicles that would show you visually with a graphic every time you turned on a system how much range would disappear, you know.
Which is really cool. I mean, it's great that they're able to communicate that to consumers now. You know, something on the screen with a big giant green dial with the car, and then all of these. You know, here's a tab for your, you know, for your fan, for your, you know, your climate control, your heated seats, air conditioning. All these things that are going to draw juice, and every time you put one on, the bar goes up a little bit. So you learn pretty quickly. Oh, the more of these things that I'm running, the worse my fuel economy is going to be.
Yeah, but that could be a detriment too in the marketplace, right? Because I mean, the early adopters will all put up with that. You know, we'll turn off the heat. You know, we'll put on a coat to drive, but the general public's not going to do that. I don't think.
Well, the Pacifica Hybrid, if you're going to get all of that electric range, you need to do those kinds of things, and it's similar to driving the Bolt, where you drive it maybe 60 miles an hour instead of 70. You drive it with economical air conditioning or roll down a window. So yeah, people are going to have to.
I'll say I'm the coldest woman in America. I've been awarded that title many times, and I drive a Volt. I'm on my third leased Volt, and I usually, unless it's a very, very cold day here in Michigan, you know, like teens, maybe low 20s, all I ever use are the heated seats and the heated steering wheel, and I'm good.
She also wears a hat, you know, stocking hat
Yes.
most of the day.
Well, I was going to say, you people are really committed, or you should be. Okay,
She's really very warm.
Bob, let's turn on to the next one, the Honda Clarity fuel cell. Have you ever had a fuel cell on the top 10
did.
best engine list?
Tucson, the Hyundai Tucson,
Okay.
a couple of years ago. And that one was getting 265 miles of range on a full tank of hydrogen. This one, the new, the Honda Clarity, 366, making it the longest range of any zero-emission vehicle on the planet, which is pretty impressive. So 366 miles, that's great. Of course, you have the infrastructure challenges associated
How'd you
with
fill up the
hydrogen.
tank, or could
Well,
you?
We didn't. It was filled up for us, and it was brought to us with 366 miles of range, so we were able to
So
drive it for a
Honda
whole
trailered
week.
the car to you.
They did. They did.
Is there any public refuel? I know there are hydrogen stations in the area, but I think they're all for research groups.
Tech centers. Yeah.
Not around Metro Detroit, but you get out to the West Coast, you get to the East Coast, and this infrastructure is growing. So I understand some people are going to think, oh, well, that's ridiculous because few people can actually can get the fuel for the cars. But this infrastructure is coming. We need zero-emission vehicles, and if this felt like a science project to us, we wouldn't have put it on the list. But this drives like a very natural car. The braking is very natural. The acceleration is very natural. And so in that sense, it turns the wheels exactly the way we want it to, and that's why it's on the list.
And it's innovative as well. I mean, we're not talking about evaluating infrastructure here. We're evaluating engines and powertrains and propulsion systems. And this system is 33% smaller than the previous generation fuel cell stack, and produces 1.5 times the power, and fits in the space of a V6 engine. So it fits into the Clarity is kind of like a really nice accord with this fuel cell stack. So they can drop this powertrain into anything that they build that has a V6, which is very innovative.
We want to recognize innovative engineering, and we feel that this vehicle does it.
That's it.
Okay, and one more green car, if you will, on the list, and That's the Toyota Camry hybrid. Bob, you want to start with that?
We looked at both the Camry 2.5, and this is a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine.
All new.
All new. Not a bad engine, but boy, when you add the electric propulsion to it, it fills in all the weak spots, any low torque areas, low power areas in the driving range. Suddenly, it's like, how was it described, Tom? Like turbo.
Turbo-like boost.
Yeah, so 208 horsepower altogether, which is a good number for a hybrid. But yeah, a number of the judges said just driving along when they, let's say you're doing 50 miles an hour and you step on the gas a little bit, you want some more. It doesn't just feel like the gas engine is kicking in. You're feeling some of that electric boost, and so almost acting
Really
like a
helps.
turbocharger to some extent.
Yeah.
What impressed me about the Camry hybrid is it matches the fuel economy of the base Prius.
Yep.
And the Prius was designed from the ground up to be only a hybrid.
Yeah.
And here's the Camry, which is a sedan, and they hybridized it, and it matches the Prius. To me, that says, boy, did they do their job on this car.
Absolutely, and it should certainly help the ratio of hybrid sales. The Camry 4-cylinder and V6 have been the power plants everybody goes to for that vehicle, and I think this, especially where it's priced, is going to be a very alluring proposition.
Yeah, and it's important that they're doing this now, right? Because Prius sales have been down, and now you have this all-new vehicle, the Camry. Interesting interior, a lot of interesting design aspects of the car, and now this great powertrain. It seems to me, Toyota is stepping up their game on hybrids even further.
Now we got to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum here, because you also have the 5-liter V8 from the Mustang in it.
Yep.
And Tom, why did it make the list?
There was only one V8 in the competition this year, and this came after a year ago when we had 0 V8s on our list. First time for a long time when we had no V8. So, 460 horsepower. How much more do I have to say? It makes all the right sounds. Low-end torque, upper-end torque, it's all there. And this same engine also appearing in the F-150, very versatile. And get this, we were getting like 26 miles per gallon in a Mustang, and I don't think any of us were driving it terribly gently either. And then interesting, engineering behind this. This is the 5-liter V8, which we had on our list a number of years ago. I think in the Boss 302 when it was making 444 horsepower. And now at 460 with the addition of direct injection with port injection. Very interesting, which was something that only Toyota was doing, and now Ford is very heavily into it as well. And I think Bob had a lot of experience with that engine.
Yeah. Got to drive it, here in Michigan, but also on the drive program that they did out in California. And, just a tremendous engine. When you put it in drag strip mode and launch it, you're at beyond legal velocity before you get to third gear.
Yeah. And it's a 10-speed automatic.
Yeah.
10-speed automatic.
I like that.
Yeah.
Breaking the law and 7 more gears to go.
So yeah, we're talking, you could go to hyperspace for sure. And also, to touch on just a little bit more of the technology Tom mentioned, that they've added the dual fuel injection. This is also the first mass application of the plasma arc spray-in cylinder liner that they did in the 5.2 GT350 Shelby Mustang. Now they've applied it across the board in all of these 5 liters that will go in the Mustang, as well as America's best-selling vehicle, the F-150 pickup.
And that's a great segue, but I want to linger on that thought a moment, because you're pointing out this is a manufacturing process, the spray-in liners, right?
Right, yeah.
And so manufacturing can play a big role in making an engine more efficient, more powerful, or what have you.
A little more displacement, and drops about 8 pounds from the block by taking out those cast iron cylinder liners.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned the F-150. Let's jump into the next category. And Christy, why don't you start with it? You've got 3 different turbo V6s on the list.
And they're all great. They're all fantastic. And you're not going to even think about what happened to the V8 when you drive these, because plenty of usable power. In some cases more than you really need. And in the case of the F-150, I mean, you look at, you see 2.7 liter and you think, oh my goodness, this is going to be horrible. And it's
because you think it's too small an engine.
You think it's too small to
Half
motivate
the size
that
of
big
most
a vehicle.
engines that we used to have in those trucks.
Yeah, but it motivates that vehicle remarkably. I mean, it was really a revelation for me to drive that with that engine.
And possibly the most stunning application of stop-start that we've seen.
Yeah.
To this point.
Unbelievably quiet.
In the F-Series pickup.
Yes.
You're saying the
F-Series
stop-start
pickup.
was the smoothest you've ever
You
run
don't
into.
even notice that it occurs.
Maybe it helps that you have such a large engine bay, and you have a lot of areas where you can encapsulate certain sound. But I was standing at the fender, outside the car. Bob was inside, and I had my ear up to the fender. I wasn't sure if it was on, and when it cycled on and when it cycled out, I couldn't even tell. And I'm like, come on, where's the,
Man,
it was that hard
that's
to
pretty good.
hear. It was really something.
So that's a system where people won't shut it off, and it will save fuel.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Kia Stinger. I'm sure a lot of people still don't know what the Stinger is, but they're going to learn about it. And Tom, why did the twin turbo V6 from that make the list?
A 3.3 liter twin turbo V6 that was evaluated head-to-head with the Infiniti Q50 3-liter twin turbo V6. I'm sorry, 3.3 liter for the Hyundai Kia, but the 3-liter in the Infiniti. So we had these two going right up against each other. We first evaluated the 3.3 in the Genesis G80, this big luxury sedan that is just a wonderful cruiser. We were also getting about 25 miles per gallon, very impressive. And to Christy's point, you don't need a V8. Because this is doing the job. And then we tested the Stinger, which 700 pounds lighter, same horsepower, same torque, 365 horsepower, 376 pound-feet of torque, and just really, really moving the vehicle, raising the bar as far as we're concerned on these turbos. Keep in mind also, this engine made the list over the BMW 3-liter inline-6, which is a single turbo. BMW has 33 awards, 10 best engines trophies, more than anybody, and that engine, the BMW 3-liter inline-6, didn't make it, while this Hyundai Kia engine did, and so
That's really saying something.
It says a lot.
Yeah, wow, to beat out BMW like that,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And the character of this engine in that Stinger is just spot on. I mean, this is a sports sedan, and you know it.
Yeah, but it's also very refined. I mean, the G80 is refined in a certain way, and this is refined in the sense that there's not a lot of vibration or harshness, which you sometimes get in these high-powered sports sedans. It's even in sport mode, I found it to be very pleasurable.
Yeah, great sounds, though.
And
Great sounds.
cycling not only from sport mode, but down to comfort and eco mode if you really want to save fuel on a road trip or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were getting in the low 20s, mid 20s fuel
The
economy.
Stinger.
So
I think we were driving it harder than
Yes,
the
I think we
Genesis
were.
quite a bit.
Yeah. And just as we see a trend towards twin turbo V6s in the 3-liter-ish range,
Yeah.
2-liter turbos seem to be taking over this industry, and we've got 2 of them on your list. Bob, why don't you tackle them?
Well, one is the Jag 2-liter. Let me pitch this to Tom. This is the first Jag, like the
engine ever to
Kia,
make
the
our
first
list.
Jag we've had on the
Yeah.
list.
And for Jag, this is a big deal because this Ingenium engine family, 2-liter diesel and gas, is all Jaguar. There is no Ford DNA. There wasn't, it didn't start back when Ford still held the keys for Jaguar. So they're very proud of this engine. They have a lot to be proud of because it truly does the job. This version that we tested is making 247 horsepower, but there's another high output version at 296 that's available today. And we'll test that one next year. We couldn't get it for this year's competition, but at 247 horsepower, it's going right up against BMW and Audi and Mercedes and Cadillac, and it's right there. I mean, it's locked in.
Stands out.
It's really good. Fuel economy was impressive. Lots of low end, lots of mid range. Just doing everything that we wanted to, and $35,000 is a base price in a Jag with this engine.
In today's market, that's a screaming bargain.
It is,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But talking about screaming ones,
Yeah.
Okay.
the other 4-cylinder turbo on the
Yeah.
list, in the Honda Civic Type R.
Yeah.
I mean, give us the specs on that one.
306 horsepower. Oh my God.
306 horsepower
306
out of a
horsepower.
2-liter engine.
And a
With
Civic.
front-wheel drive.
Yeah.
With front-wheel drive, so you think, oh, that would be awful to drive. But they did a lot of interesting work on the suspension to mitigate torque steer, and this thing barely torque steer at all. It really tracks well, channeling all this power. And then the exhaust, it's got a 3-way exhaust. I mean, you don't usually see 3 pipes in the back of a car, but they did some really innovative piping of the resonators to funnel more air into all 3 resonators when the load required it. And so, again, 26 miles per gallon, and we were beating the hell out of this car, John. It just so much fun.
And the
Clearly
rev
the most-
matching, downshifting.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, phew.
Most powerful Honda ever in the U.S. And yes, the rev matching on the transmission. You can be doing 80 miles an hour in 5th gear and switch to 2nd if you want, and it'll just
and you hear it.
It just winds up and
Does
it's
its thing.
great.
Yeah.
See, it's so interesting what you're saying, because I remember in the not too distant past, if a car company could get 100 horsepower per liter,
Yeah.
that was really saying something. But it was at the top end of the line. It was
Yeah.
Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Lotuses that could achieve that. Very, very expensive. And now you're saying a Honda Civic, albeit a Type R,
Yeah.
is getting way over that.
Now it's more like 150 horsepower per liter is kind of the price of entry for an all-new 4-cylinder turbo. Yeah, it's really astonishing, really.
And we should point out that another contender on our list was fitted with a version of the same engine, completely different character in the Honda Accord, but just really, really strong, refined 4-cylinder turbo.
You thought it was a
D2.
V6 at first.
I thought, oh, yeah. I honestly, I was digging through the paperwork as I was driving, trying to figure out, is this a V6?
Yeah.
When did we get this?
So if the Type R didn't make the list, the Honda Accord was going to make the list. With a very similar engine, they're related. Of course, the Type R has more reinforcement and
All of that. But
higher boost pressure and that sort of thing. But the Honda Accord's very nice too.
Okay, we've talked about hybrids, fuel cell, pure electric, twin turbo V6, turbo 4-cylinder. Christy, what do you think are some of the trends? What do you, when you look at it all, what are you walking away with?
Well, certainly electrification is playing a bigger role. We think, we're not exactly sure, but we think this is the most electrified powertrains we've had on the list ever, because we have 4 this year. Certainly the downsizing trend, you're seeing the mass market brands going from V6s to Turbo 4s, then you're seeing the luxury brands going from V8s to Turbo 6s. And just more of the same to come as we approach more stringent fuel economy standards in the United States.
And then you also have to factor in how exactly do you define electrification? So is a stop-start system, is that considered, like the Buick LaCrosse e-Assist, which was also in our competition, did fairly well. I mean, that's not as electrified as a Bolt, but it's still got that. So you have this kind of gray area of deciding, yes, we have electrification. So to Christy's point, we've had a lot of vehicles over the years that may have had stop-start that made our list. Is that considered electrified?
Yeah, good question. Good question. Because you got strong hybrids, mild hybrids, micro hybrids,
Yeah, exactly.
stop-start.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about?
There's a
exactly?
huge range.
Right.
Bob, what's your walk away from
Well,
this year's
I would,
10 best?
I would say definitely more electrification, more small turbos. But the thing that always strikes me is performance. Every company is engineering performance into these engines, whether it's gaining it through turbos, through electrification, through the way the engine is set up, through more torque, more low-end torque. Instead of just giving you a sappy, very efficient 4-cylinder engine to meet a fuel economy mark, they're hitting the fuel economy mark and making it a performance
Fun to drive.
engine, very fun to drive. I love that. I love that the engine, that the companies are really working at making their cars fun to drive.
And Tom?
Oh, so many takeaways for me, but the turnover in these engine programs to me is huge, because this year we only had 2 return winners. That means eight new powertrains making the list. As you know, engines have been in the market in some cases many years before they get changed or upgraded. Nowadays, an engine make our list. The next year, we might see some improvements to that same engine. They're just cycling through a lot more quickly. So I find that really impressive. And then, this turbocharging trend, 20 out of 32 engines in our competition with turbochargers. Something else we saw, the turbochargers are getting so good that we had a couple of supercharged engines in the competition, and I felt like there was lag in the supercharged engines compared to some of the turbos, which it used to be the other way around. It was always the supercharger that gave you the instant gratification. The turbo had that lag. Well, now the lag's been dealt with.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Look, we're going to have to wrap this up. I'd also add that these engines are becoming much more refined, especially the 4s, which, used to rev up and they'd be all rattly or buzzy. And boy, that's going away real quickly, too. Yeah. So it's amazing how sophisticated these things are getting.
Right.
But as I said, with that, we're going to have to wrap it up. I want to thank all 3 of you, Tom Murphy, Christy Schweinsberg, Bob Gritzinger. Really interesting discussion on the 10 best engines, at least as Ward sees them.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.